Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, and as you know, I just came back from Africa, a very intense trip, which you're going to be seeing a lot more high-quality videos from in the near future. So, of course, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification button. But, of course, in the meantime, let's talk about what is really happening right now. Of course, yesterday was April Fool's Day. One day out of the year where people actually critically evaluated what they saw online. But in reality, April Fool's should really be Election Day, or every day if you're watching the mainstream media. And that's why in this video, I wanted to talk about something that I've been talking about for years, something that has been deemed a conspiracy theory, but it's finally being understood by everyone to be true. Now, to preface this, you should understand that mainly 6 corporate conglomerates in the United States not only control hundreds of channels, websites, news outlets, newspapers, and magazines, but roughly 90% of all media in the United States. And it's not just corporate conglomerates that have an influence on media, it's also special interest groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, and of course other secretive organizations that have a major influence when it comes to media. Because obviously, as even Tom Clancy put it, the control of information is something the elite always does, particularly in a despotic form of government. Information, knowledge is power. If you can control information, you can control the people. And even major psychological journals have proved that the media constructs public belief and engineers social change. Now, of course, power that used to control media is, of course, threatened by the decentralization of it, by the liberation of it, like we've seen online, which has been exposing it for what it really is, and that is propaganda-based mind control, as we've seen exemplified just a few days ago with a viral video exposing how news stations across the United States were pumping out the same exact scripted message to its viewers. This, of course, was an organized effort by the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, a media conglomerate that is the largest television station operator in the United States, with around 200 stations in more than 100 markets. And ironically, dozens and dozens of news anchors read the same script with the same lines, talking about the, quote, troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country, saying that this is, quote, extremely dangerous to our democracy, as they ironically demonstrated that through their scripted news broadcasts. And of course, the irony here only gets richer, as this is the only statement I've seen so far from the Sinclair Broadcasting Group that said, quote, that they are committed to reporting facts, adding that the false stories can result in dangerous consequences, referring to the Pizzagate conspiracy theory as an example. Because God forbid people start asking questions about very high, powerful sexual abusers like Harvey Weinstein, Dennis Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, former Prime Minister of England, Sir Edward Heath, that were primarily able to get away with their sexual abuse and horrendous crimes mainly because of the blind eye from the mainstream media. We definitely don't want that fake news getting out there to the general public. And I think if anything, this story shows you the type grip of control that very few people have over the media that we see, especially with the details that we're learning about this case. Like the fact that we're finding out that the Sinclair Group regularly sends video segments to stations it owns and refers to them as must-runs. And of course, the quote, journalists do exactly what they're told to do and read off their script without any question, like we've seen with the Sinclair video. And according to one of them, this is of course from an anonymous source from CNN, so I don't know how much you could trust this, said, quote, at my station, everyone was uncomfortable doing it. A local news anchor said the person insisted on anonymity because they believed they would be fired for speaking out. And from my experiences knowing these, quote, journalists and also even getting drunk with the White House press corps before, that's absolute hooey. Well, predominantly hooey. Now, there are a lot of people who do have issues in this working in the industry, but in reality, if you're having some moral conundrum, why continue to do it? And they've been doing it for a very long time. Conan O'Brien even perfectly demonstrated this with regular segments on his show, where for years he continued to document how news anchors were saying the same exact thing over and over again all across the country, just reading the same script from the teleprompter. This, of course, is nothing new. Journalists are handed scripts, and mainly, they have very little to no control of what those scripts actually say. And in reality, they're just attractive actors who are told to read a teleprompter that is honed by the special interest that their news company represents, or is aligned with, or has some kind of deal worked out. Either way, it's still very tightly controlled, not only to the words that the anchors say, but also their tonality and even dress code and colors that they wear on screen in order for them to use psychological programming effectively and invoke the right emotions from you to fit along with their propaganda, as we're seeing from the notes released from the Sinclair group that was sent to local news stations all across the country. And this one particular group is just expanding its efforts, as they are right now seeking approval from the Justice Department and the FCC for a nearly $3.9 billion deal with Tribune Media, which would expand their media markets all across the country. Now, of course, it's very interesting to see mainstream media companies who are right now criticizing the Sinclair Broadcasting Group for their, quote, scripted propaganda, when of course we know that they're guilty of it as well, especially when you look at the bigger consolidation of media, and especially their influence with secretive organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations. But Donald Trump is definitely not making the situation better for himself, especially with a lot of criticism of people saying that he is connected with the Sinclair group, and the Sinclair group is pushing pro-Donald Trump points, so the FCC votes in favor of their larger merger, which is soon to happen. But Donald Trump just moments ago tweeted, "So funny to watch fake news networks among the most dishonest groups of people I have ever dealt with criticize Sinclair Broadcasting for being biased. Sinclair is far superior to CNN and even more fake NBC, which is a total joke." No, they're just as bad. And the same thing that we're seeing happen with the Sinclair group happens with most media organizations in this country, especially when they're controlled by a conglomerate. It's pretty much similar turds calling one another turds. They're all turds. Also, very interestingly enough, many people are claiming that there is censorship of this original exposed Sinclair video, as many internet users with VPNs are saying that this video is actually trending #1 in Canada, the United Kingdom, #4 in Australia, but yet nowhere on the trending list of YouTube in the United States, which of course we found out recently is mainly manually determined. People are also claiming that this video was deleted from the front page of Reddit 2 times. And of course, if we're talking about media manipulation, we of course have to talk about Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, and Google and their manipulation that has been happening within the last few months. Also, of course, done for a special interest or a political agenda that we have seen demonstrated. And with all the algorithm changes and finagling by big social media companies, it no longer matters who people are subscribed to or want to see or click to be notified of when they release content, because they decide what's in your stream. And if content goes against their interests or the people that they're involved with, you'll be shadow banned and most people won't even see your content, or you'll just be directly censored or deleted away from their platforms and never seen again, which they even openly admit about socially engineering and directly controlling what content gets seen and what content gets shadow banned. And also, on the other hand, we've seen what content and ideas get promoted when of course it works in the favor of these special interests, or it divides and conquers people to fight against each other so we don't see these interests above us. And I think it should be pretty clear for everyone, the problem does not just stop with the Sinclair Broadcasting Group. It is far more elaborate and deeper than we think it actually goes, especially when it comes to push a narrative to propagandize their points that they want you to believe in, and of course hide away anything that they do not want you to see. And of course, in my own personal example, the worst perpetrator of this is of course major social media companies like Facebook, who not only have a political agenda but spy on you at the same time that they are doing it. And it only gets worse when you go up the food chain and look at companies like Google that dwarfs the amount of information that Facebook has on you, that of course is sold to other companies and can be used against you in the near future. Now of course, lies and deceptions are the name of the game here, and the only real way to fight this is to expose what's really happening. And they use all means of ways to hide from you what's really happening, and the only people really exposing this is a portion of the alternative independent media that highlight things that should be talked about. like the fact that the United States foreign policy is based on a duplicitous human rights record and just laid out the red carpet from the Saudi Arabian prince that is known for human atrocities, like the ones directly linked to the United States in cooperation with that has led to 50,000 children in Yemen dying of starvation and disease, leaving millions of them and other innocent civilians to the same faith, which the mainstream media, in large part, just totally ignores, creating the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And when there's even a hint of our administration and government straying away from that continuous duplicitous policy, like we've seen Trump hint that the United States would be leaving Syria soon, the mainstream media, of course, jumps on the same propaganda bandwagon and tries to shift the dialogue to be in favor of their interest, the military-industrial complex. And the first thing when you put in Syria and Trump into Google is, of course, how, quote, this is the single worst decision Trump could make. Of course, calling and pushing for more war and more conflict within the United States and outside of the United States, which they even brazenly say to not worry about, since the United States could win a nuclear war with Russia. This is how brazen the US mainstream media is in their propaganda efforts, while at the same time directing our attention on small, minuscule non-issues that divide and conquer us. And hey, if that doesn't work, let's just scare the crap out of people to use emotional-based propaganda, like we're seeing with articles like this that say, quote, London murder rate overtakes New York for the first time ever after spat of fatal stabbings and shootings, ultimately pushing an agenda to make you fear the common man, making you believe that there's a mass shooter behind the corner, or a jihadi, or a racist, or an illegal, or any lunatic madman for you to hate the other common man, when in reality homicide rates and violent crime rates are down dramatically from what they were just a few years ago, which of course just doesn't make headlines. That's not important for you to know. Trying to make the general public more paranoid, more fearful, more afraid of the common man, dividing us, while crooks get away with committing the same crimes over and over again, which of course people are failing to see in this utter chaotic mess as it keeps repeating itself in front of them, with the reality that they want created laid out in front of you, but is a lot different than in actual real life. And things are changing, and they're changing for the better, not only with homicide rates and violent crime rates going down, but also with people finally waking up to the propaganda and conditioning that's happening to the American people. And even according to the Monmouth University study that just came out today, that the American people are waking up as well, and that a majority of people believe that major media outlets disseminate fake news at least occasionally. And this number has gone up since last year from all demographics, including Republicans that are at 89%, up from 79% last year, independents up 82% from 66% last year, and Democrats 61%, up from 43% last year. And in large part, that is because of you guys supporting, watching, and sharing real independent media, even through the censors and filters that we have to go through right now. And even now, with massive demonetization, filtration, censorship, almost everything standing in our way, the message is still getting across. That shows you that when an idea's time has come, there's nothing that could stop it. Now, of course, this is still a struggle, and it won't get easier from here, especially for independent media, because of course the people who control media and the access to media and that vast amount of power won't easily let it go, and surely and slowly they're trying to take it back in order to control you. And the best way to do that is of course with information. And of course the best way to counter that is of course to continue to speak and share information, which of course they don't want out there. And if you thought this video did that, share it with your friends and family members. And I know I spoke in kind of mass generalizations here, but this is what I truly believe is happening. If you think I'm wrong, if you have another opinion, if you have something else to add to this conversation, I'm looking forward to your comments in the comment section of this video, which I will be answering in the first hour that this video is out. Of course, all the sources that I used will be in our Steemit post, which will be in the comment section as well. And ultimately, what I see happening here is a great thing, but don't lose sight of it and understand that this problem, especially with the Sinclair group, is a lot more complex and a lot bigger than with what they're willing to tell you. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of real independent media. If it wasn't for you guys sharing our videos, donating to us, keeping us running, being our eyes and ears, we would not be here, and we're only here because of you. And now to leave this video, I wanted to play a video from Aldous Huxley warning us about the technocrats.
Are there specific devices or methods of communication which diminish our freedoms?
Well, there are certainly devices which can be used in this way. Hitler used terror on the one kind, brute force on the one hand, but he also used a very efficient form of propaganda. He had the radio, which he used to the fullest extent, and was able to impose his will on an immense mass of people. I mean, the Germans were a highly educated people. We mustn't be caught by surprise by our own advancing technology. This has happened again and again in history, and suddenly people have found themselves in a situation which they didn't foresee and doing all sorts of things they didn't really want to do. At present, the television, I think, is being used quite harmlessly. But I mean, imagine, which must be the situation in all communist countries, where the television, where it exists, is always saying the same thing the whole time, is always driving along. It's drumming in of a single idea all the time. It's obviously an immensely powerful instrument. All technology is in itself morally neutral. These are just powers which can either be used well or ill. It's the same thing with atomic energy. We can either use it to blow ourselves up, or we can use it as a substitute for the coal and the oil which are running out.